Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Siddhaji Gopal ki jai, Sri Gauri Vaishnava Guru Parampara ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajunulambita Bhujo Kanakavadato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavotaro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahorito Bodhai Pushpavanto Chitro Sandottamano Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Suvalapriya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchan Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwavanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Pranamami Haripriye Sri Radha Govinda ki jai, Krishna Balaram ki jai, Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavat ki jai, Gaur Premanand. Good morning. Please move closer. Move the drum. There's a spirit of social non-distancing. So we have been discussing the some related topics related to the Brahma Vimohan Lila. We talked about the position of Brahma. We talked about the Brahma Vimohan Lila itself, what it encompasses in a broad sense, and how it's looked at from our Sampradaya's point of view, to some extent how it's looked at from the vantage point of other Sampradayas as well. And today we begin the Lila narrative, but I want to begin the Lila narrative with some background to the Brahma Vimohan Lila, which is the place, the Brahma Vimohan Lila, in my estimation, where Sakyarasa really comes onto the stage, if you will. It's the beginning of the Sakyarasa aesthetic center of the 10th canto, which follows the Vatsalya center, which is followed by the Madhurya Rasa center. As we'll see, we'll probably get to tomorrow, it begins with a real note of excitement. But the related material that I want to speak on today is drawn from the chapter that precedes it, the last part of the 11th chapter of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. We're going to begin on verse 35. And we'll go through them highlight some of the verses and speak about them to the end of the chapter. What do we find? Well, we'll see here. In verse 35 is the beginning of a new section in this chapter itself, chapter 11. Yes, and it goes like this. Vrindavanam sampravishya sarvakala sukhavaham tatta chakru rajavasam chakatayat ardha chandravat. So the text says Vrindavanam sampravishya, entering into Vrindavan. So what we find here is that at this point in the Bhagavatam, Krishna and family have come across the Jamuna from Mahavan Gokul, where the first part and the middle part, Adi Kumar, Madhya Kumar of Krishna's childhood, were enacted, coming across the river into Vrindavan, where Govardhan is, and so forth. This is the beginning of the Seish Kumar, the last part of Krishna's childhood, where he's moving more rapidly in the direction of Poganda, boyhood. These two ages, that should be noted, Kumar and Poganda, are specialties of Braj in that they don't occur anywhere else. Obviously, the Kishore Lila is also a specialty of Braj, but it does occur outside of Braj. He remains a Kishore in Mathura and Dwarka, which is itself wonderful. And there's from the Sakras point of view, there's a specialty to the Poganda age, which comes in the 15th chapter. Here we're just in the 11th, in that the excellences of Kumar are present there, and there's a touch of his adolescence in the middle part of his Poganda as well. There's a couple of different ways, I should mention, in which the ages of Krishna, or the age of Krishna, has been described, and it seems contradictory without understanding this. In other words, some places say this age seems much older, he did this. Maybe in some text it says at the age of 7 he came to Vrindavan. Here I'm saying he came when he was just turning into 4 years old. And those two different ways are that I believe that sometimes the texts are speaking about his actual so-called, which is actual, you decide, as I explained, actual age, and the other is speaking about the maturity that his actual age equals. So he may be 4 actually, but actually he's 7 in terms of his maturity. This is a quality that we see in some children that is very attractive. When you see some child on, they bring them to the public, that maybe they're on Voice of America or one of those kind of shows, some kid sings like an adult and as good as, and has some adult composure. And how old are you? I'm 12, I'm 8, and that maturity of age is very, very charming. So you just try to imagine the maturity of Krishna in the midst of his childhood, and how attractive that is, how it can capture everyone's attention, just that in itself. He begins to speak. He says something profound. This will begin a little later in his Poganda age. He'll speak about Dharma and so forth, and the parents will be awed by that. and so on. So if you can, this is very beautiful, a feature, of course, of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, because our God, as I often say, is human-like. And so we know what it's like to be human. And we can draw so much from our human experience, as the Goswamis have, to describe God, to understand him and bond, make a bond emotionally with him, which is the whole idea, to feel that he is ours. This is the feeling in Braj. He belongs here. He's one of us. Once Bhaktivedanta Narayana Maharaj questioned, for good reason, the idea of naming, as Prabhupada did, his deities in London, Radha, London, Ishwar, Radha and Krishna, Radha, London, Ishwar. And so he thought that was a little odd, because Krishna's, yeah, he's the Ishwar of the world, but then you're getting more and more towards his majesty, Aishvarya, and so forth, which takes him arguably more outside of Braj. But I thought, well, you could look at it another way, because he wanted to create a sense of myness. He's mine, he's ours, he's our Krishna, he's the Ishwar of London. So there we have him here, he's ours. And of course, that myness, that he's ours, that's so prominent in Braj, is the one of the characteristics of prem that is underscored by Rupa Swami in Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu. But anyway, everyone in Braj feels this way, and in the way in which I'm describing, just one way, simply to help us appreciate Krishna is very mature for his age. So here it said, Vrindavanam Sampravisya Sarvakala Sukhavaham. It said that Sarvakala, all times. So here this refers to the seasons, times of the year. Typically in the Western world, in North and South Americas, we have 4 seasons, but in India they have 6 seasons. There's a spring, there's summer, the fall, the pre-winter. Oh, there's the spring, there's the summer, there's the rainy monsoon, there's the autumn, there's the kind of like the pre-winter, and then there's winter. You have to live there to figure it out. But here, the idea is that they entered Vrindavan where all the seasons are Sukhabham, giving happiness. One of the reasons that this is mentioned here, it can be argued, is that just prior to coming here, what has been the Leelas that have been described correspond with the summer, beginning of the summer. In other texts, other Puranas and so forth, it's mentioned that after the toppling of the twin Arjun trees, one of the wonderful feats that occurred somehow in Mahaban, all of the wonderful things that happened, like Putana's passing, Trinavarta, Shakatasura, Krishna didn't overtly deal with them. So the fact that he was behind it all, that he liberated them, that he dealt with their such nefarious motives as emissaries of Kamsa as they were, could be lost, could be missed. With the pulling of the Arjun trees, well, they were old. They had been standing there for a very, very long time, based on the curse of Narada, who knows how many yugas previously, waiting for Krishna to take birth and witnessing all of the pastimes. And so he just kind of moved the mortar, and when he pulled down the trees, the rope that he was tied to the mortar to, didn't break. So obviously they were ready to fall, right? This is the thinking there. He's wonderful, but how could our child do that? So, at any rate, and this will come up as we go forward in relation to further exploits that are of a slightly different nature, in terms of how much he is involved in dealing with Kamsa's emissaries, for example. So after the falling of the Arjun trees, then they came. So it might be thought, and so they came right after, but I believe Sanatana Goswami ties this to the summer season. They came, it was the beginning of the summer. And the point being here, what is that of all of the seasons, there are in that area geographically, let's say, for example, today we can experience summer is probably the most oppressive. I mean, 120 degrees, it's on the border of the Rajasthani desert. I think in the Book of World Records or something like that, I think it's listed as the hottest place in the world, right there on the border of the Rajasthani desert. So, excuse me, I'm used to Fahrenheit, so 120 degrees. I don't know what that is in centigrade. 30, 35, 40, 50. Oh my God. Pass out. So very, very difficult. And then when the first rain comes, people on the roofs dancing like peacocks. The rain is coming, some relief, right? So here the word is used that Savrakala, all these seasons, Sukhavam, they gave great happiness. It means even the summer, it gave great happiness. Yes, it was warmer, but only warm enough to add to all of the fun of Krishna's childhood and boyhood Lila, swimming pastimes, which might not be as readily available or desirable in other seasons. It has an extra feature for that matter, as all of them do, but all of them give happiness. 6 seasons of Braj are very famous, and it's said, of course, that Brinda Devi is in charge of all of these different forests and orchestrates their movement during the different seasons for the pleasure of Krishna, corresponding with his Lila. Any season can produce the result of any other season at will, or of all the other seasons. This is a magical idea, obviously. But the Dham, the surroundings, the seasons, along with everything else, all moving only for the pleasure of Krishna. Then Tatra Chakru Vrajavasam Shakate Ardat Chandravat. So by means of carts, that means they took their bullock carts and they crossed the Jamuna. That would be quite a task. And some Puranas have said billions of cows in front of them, floating across. It's sometimes described as like the opening of the Red Sea. Maybe the Christians borrowed from that idea, rather than the reverse, which some persons have postulated in the past with regard to Krishna's Lila. But something like that, parting of the sea, and they went across, or they floated across, and cows in front. And it said here that Shakater Arda Chandravat, they made a circle, and a half circle, like a half moon, with their covered wagons, bullock carts, all of them, all of their belongings. They're moving. The entire community is moving across the Jamuna, based on reports as to the lush nature of the area in terms of grasses. Govardhan Hill, which is there. This area is presided over to the north by Hari Dev, who's the god at Manasi Ganga at Govardhan, the deity, and the Kaliya Namana, which became a sacred place after Krishna chastised Kaliya, turned him into a devotee on the south. Between these two regions, who lives there, never returns. So they came across, they made their camp there. They took some brush with thorns and put it around to protect Krishna, as they would think, from whatever, although there's no such enmity, if you will, between animals there as you find in other places. And here the place is referred to as Braj. Brajavasam. So Brajavasam, they made their residence in Braja. And Braja means herd. It refers to cows. It also means to wander, as a verb, to go, to wander, which corresponds with the noun. Cows, they wander. Jiva Goswami in Gopal Champu, in the very beginning of his poetic work, he gives a very compelling description of Vrindavan. In other places, he's given very kind of esoteric descriptions of Vrindavan, drawing from the tantras and so forth. The shaped like a star inside of a lotus, and a geometric explanation, a sonic explanation where the syllables of the mantra are here and there, and who's in between the petals. It's very abstract, yantra type of explanation. But in Gopal Champu, in the beginning, he gives a very compelling explanation and ends with a stated desire on his part to enter there. It's very, very, very attractive. And one of the things he says at the very onset, maybe in the only first 15 verses, I think the 15th verse, he says that Braj means that place in which all things are harmonized, all things are possible. It's a definition that you won't find in the lexicon. Somehow he has drawn that and given no explanation between beyond herd, beyond wandering, and so on and so forth. The two of which, obviously, as I said, go together, and speaks about the nature of the community. They are herders, so they're somewhat nomadic, moving as is required for greener grasses, greater pasture for the cows, who are their livelihood. This is thought in one sense to be kind of a lowly life. They have no home, they're wanderers, living off the land, and so on and so forth. In his commentary on Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Bali Bidibhusan makes a comment in this regard. You should not think that Krishna is lowly because he is a cowherd. Now, you won't think like that, but if you understand the culture, then there's good reason to think you're going to put God is going to be, a cowherd. You can make God a cowherd. This doesn't make a lot of sense. And of course, he goes on to say, don't think like that, because the cows are the gods on earth. They're the connection between humans and the gods. If you want to make a connection between heaven and earth, the medium is the cows, in whose bodies, it is said, all the gods are present, and from whose milk butter is made, from which ghee is made, which is used for sacrifice, which is the language, the ritual by which humans are meant to communicate with, satisfy the gods, voice their appreciation for the bounty of nature, and so on and so forth. So, very appropriate place for God to be appearing in a community of cowherd people. And there's another important point that comes to mind when we speak about Braj as a place, which the word is synonymous in this sense with Goloka. The people of cows, Loka means people, means planet or whatever realm of cows. So there may be a place for cows in human society. We don't know if the humans domesticated the cows or the cows civilized the humans, because cows are those most prominent amongst animals that are on the borderline they can live with humans happily and provide for them and be cared for at the same time. So you have, let's say you have hunters and gatherers, and then you have the animals and they're hunting and gathering, and then one animal comes in between and says, hold on here, let's calm down. I'll come in the middle, you stay with me, I'll give you milk, you won't have to hunt. You can drink, and the bull says, and I'll pull the plow. And you can do agriculture instead of killing a few animals and hanging them up, trying to keep them cold over the winter so that they'll have enough food to eat. You'll plow the fields. We can grow tons of grains and stock them. And there's a civilization, right? So the cows domesticated, civilized the humans, we'll think, rather than the humans domesticating the cows. Take care of them itself is dharmic, and indeed, as Jiva Goswami comments in Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu, it is an anga itself, a sub-anga of bhakti. The anga being to worship sacred trees, like the banyan, the peepal tree, and so forth, which we have, because up some here, actually, versions of banyan trees. So also to worship the cows, to offer them fresh fodder, to scratch their necks, and so forth. Is bhakti difficult? They're so charming. It's an attractive idea. So the point being that Braj is synonymous with Goloka, and that means that there is a realm called Goloka. Now I bring this up because the other day we were talking about Krishna's two Bhagavan Swayam. We were making the point, this is the Paribhasa Sutra to the understanding of Bhagavan. This is a very key philosophical point. But you might think, oh, okay, I got it. But why? Why is it so important that Krishna is the fountainhead of all the gods? Who cares? I mean, we like him. He's God. If he's an avatar or not, what does it make any difference? Why this big emphasis? Sounds even sectarian. You're putting your God ahead of everybody else. Just get in the flow of things here. Narayan's God, he's got a lot of different faces and so forth. Why this point? Well, if you consider the time and the place and the circumstance in which the Goswamis were founding the Sampradaya, it wasn't known that there was a place called Goloka. That's very secret. There is a reference to Mahavaikuntha. These are some references. You wouldn't get them unless you went to the Goswamis, who were able to draw them out and help to support their case. But the point of Krishna's two Bhagavan Swayam is that Krishna is the source of Narayan. Therefore, he must have his own abode. And the Leelas that he's performing must be eternal and must be ones that you can enter into. Because if Krishna is just an avatar of Narayan that just shows this side for a short period of time, it's very cute, and then closes it up. He manifests associates along with himself, plays that out, and gives some teaching of Dharma and closes it up, and then back to Vaikuntha. Where is that Leela going on in Vaikuntha, and how do you enter in there when the whole realm of Vaikuntha is worship in Aishvarya and reverence? All the faces of the Godhead are thought to be faces of Narayan. Ram is peculiar. Therefore, we as Gaudiyas, we separate it out also. The Ayodhya. Here we find a difference and a distance between Ayodhya and Vaikuntha. What is the distance? The distance is in rasa. And that's the distance, in feeling, in the measure of affection and possibilities of love. Because there we see, unlike Vaikuntha, God has a mother and a father. He has brothers. There's some hint of Vatsalya, of Sakya, Lakshman, Hanuman, Ram Lakshman. Yes, you will enter there like Hanuman, as Dasya, but it's curious. These stand out, mother and father of Ram, the brothers, as pointers to the possibility of this type of relationship. Is there a place where you could have, that is Golok then. Further, more secret. So in one sense, this is one way in which we can appreciate the importance, especially at the time, establishing the Sampradaya. If Krishna is not the source of Narayan, then he doesn't have his own abode. Goloka, the cows, and all those leelas, and the possibility of entering there doesn't exist. It's a pretty important point, as you can appreciate. Of course, it's also important because if we are to give entirely of ourselves, then we have to give without motivation of return, and we have to be able to give that in a place that can take unlimitedly. So all types of love he can take. Narayan can't take them all. So if you want to worship Narayan as friendship, the people there will tell you, what are you doing here? How did you even get here? As they told Gopakumar, you can't talk to Narayan like that. This is not the place. Nard, being astute as he is, and also being in Sakyarasa himself, and a resident of Goloka in the outer regions of Dwarka and Mathura, came to Vaikuntha and helped pick him up as a Siksha Guru, right? Anyway, that's another story. But Krishna makes that claim. I can reciprocate in kind. However you approach me, I can reciprocate in kind. So you have to give without motivation, but you have to find the place that can take completely and absolutely. This is what Krishna represents. So Krishna's two above one, so an important point. Here the word Braj, all things possible, using Jiva Goswami's explanation. It speaks to the apricot nature. There's adhoksaja and an apricot, aprakrita. Adhoksaja, aprakrita. Adhoksaja means overtly transcendental. Once when I was in Kerala, I went to the Padmanabh Kshetra on Ekadasi. The temple's a city. You go inside, it's like you're in a city. And there's this huge Padmanabh deity, 24 feet long, reclining, and little temples around the different avatars and so forth. And it was Ekadasi, so it was a celebration. They had elephants in there and a parade going around, and every 10, 20 yards they'd stop and horns would blow and Brahma would chant prayers. And I thought, now I know. I had a glimpse of it once before. I was in Los Angeles and Prabhupada was present. He called his temple there New Dwarka for different reasons. For one, I used to stand next to him every day when he was there, and he spent a lot of time there. I was lucky to spend time with him. I got initiated there, and in those years he would come for 3 months in the spring and 3 months in the winter, for 2-3 years. So I would stand on the right side of his Vyasasana so that I wouldn't fall asleep, to be sure, and listen carefully to his lecture. At any rate, one day he was speaking and he said, "So don't think that you're living in Los Angeles." And he turned to me and he looked at me and he said, "This is Vaikuntha." And it was very startling to me. And that night I took rest, as we would do, 30 brahmacharis lying on the floor. And I woke up to what I thought was the call of nature. It's part of it. And then after dealing with that, I turned and out the window, you could see, the Los Angeles skyline. It was on the upper floor. And it turned into Vaikuntha. And Prabhupada's word just rang in my head. Try to go to sleep after that. You're not living in Los Angeles. This is Vaikuntha. So that I had the same experience when this Ekadasi procession was going on. And so it's very startling. It's very like overtly transcendental. Whereas the aprakrita form of transcendence is it's like the prakrita. It's human life. It looks like this world, but it's not. So a little deceiving. You have to pay. What is it? What does Bhagavatam say?
Nityam Bhagavat Seva.
Nityam Bhagavata Seva. You have to pay close attention, right? Nityam Bhagavata Seva, which will bring out all the unwanted things, and then you will understand. Got to pay close attention. It could be missed. That would be a great loss. Therefore, Nityananda Prabhu wants to make sure that doesn't happen. Therefore, he's pointing to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Take advantage of him, take advantage. No one was more involved in securing a faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advent and dispensation on a wide scale than Nityananda Prabhu. So, one of the ideas, I think, here, Jiva Goswami, all things possible, there are things that are happening there that you think shouldn't happen, shouldn't relate to God like this. Wrestling with him, arguing with him, criticizing him, refusing to let him into the forest bower, as Radha may do, with Lalita checking him at the door and so forth. How can you behave with God? All these things are possible. Even this conception of the absolute. Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj played on the word Brajan as it appears as a verb at the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. What did he say there? He said, Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Pratyajamami Kam Sharanam Braja. So Krishna is saying, come to me, Braj, come to me, and surrender, give up the Dharma, give up Varnashram, forget about Gyan Marg and its goal of sannyas, Prityaja, Sarva Dharman Prityaja. And just Mame Kam Sharanam Braja, come to me. And Aham Tvam Sarvapapi. Don't worry, because you've been told over and over and over again, if you don't do this according to Dharma and you don't do that according to Dharma, you'll be culpable. There'll be a reaction. You'll go to hell. That's Dharma. Don't worry about that. Don't be immoral. And I'll give you no opportunity to, because coming to me means that coming to me with your heart, that means you come to me and you leave things behind that aren't favorable to me, that aren't pleasing to me. That's part of coming to me. So your moral compass will be what's favorable for Krishna Bhakti, I will accept. Whatever my mind and senses may say to the contrary. What's unfavorable, that I will reject, regardless of what my senses and mind may say. This is immediately, I will rise then above this hot, cold, good and bad, happy, sad products, as Krishna says, of the mind. This is Sharanagati. This is the beginning of Sharanagati. We come with this in mind. The spirit behind this limb of Sharanagati is a commitment, some promise. Yes, I will do. I make a commitment. I'm here. I will accept that. What's being offered to me, this window of opportunity. That's a little higher, but to come into bhakti. So he played on the word Braj. He said, what did he say? As it appears there in the Gita, he said, oh, when Krishna uttered the word Braj, which here means come to me, his mind went to Braj. And then he couldn't continue the Bhagavad Gita anymore. He's lost. There, he's completely captured. That's where to find him. So here they have come. Now, the Krishna's Prakat Lila is divided in this way within Braj, between Gokul Mahavan, Vrindavan, and Nandagram, Nandishwar. Here also, it is implied by the word Braj that they have come to Braj, which is a moving place. It also means to us, oh, we need to be flexible. We need to be prepared to pack up like a sadhu. She only stays long enough to milk a cow and gone. So that we'll not be attached, not be dependent on anyone or any circumstance. Attached to Krishna, then circumstances, whatever they may be, are not an issue if I can serve. Mama Janmani Janmanishwara Bhavata Bhakti according to Ahi. So Braj, again, when Krishna utters it, his mind goes there. And there all things are possible. And that is a very flexible place. You have to become very open, very flexible. I remember in the presence of Prabhupada, I was ready to stand up, sit down, stand on your head, sell books, burn the books. It didn't matter. We didn't sell books because we were book salesmen in our previous life or something like that. Far from it. Yeah. He wanted that, so we do that. He tells us to now, okay, stop, burn them all. And we would have done that. So to be flexible. This is Braj. If you want Kampashu Pulakare, all these Satvika Bhavs, transformations of the body, you have to be at least able to bend over. Trinadapi Sunichena, Torodapi Sahishna, Manina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sabha. Do you know the meaning? To be humble, Mahaprabhu said, like a blade of grass. To be tolerant, to honor to others, expect no honor for oneself. Chanting with this in mind, then very quickly you'll make progress. Then all those ecstatic transformations will come. They won't come before that. So they've come to Braj, and this is one division, as I said, of where the aprakat, or the prakat, pastimes take place. Early pastimes up to the falling of the Arjun trees in Mahavan Gokul. These are the first 3 years of Krishna's Kumar Lila. Now he comes into Braj, and Braj movement means that they were moving within the area. And sometimes they would move as far as Nandishwar, Nandagram. And then back and all along the Jamuna, moving with the herd, camping here, camping there. It's kind of the idea. But and now we're just on the cusp of what? Entering from Krishna's Kumara age into his Poganda. So his boyhood is very prominent in this section, living in Vrindavan, whereas his Kishore age, where the his rendezvous in his romantic life are, front and center. They begin to manifest in Poganda as well, as I mentioned, in the middle stage of the Poganda, but in the Kishore age, well, this is on the front of his mind. By that time, a place has been established in Nandagram, the place of Nanda Maharaj. So these are the 3 divisions. And here they've come to Braj. And what does it say next? Next verse. Vrindavanam Govardhanam Jamuna Hulinani Cha. Diksha Sid Uttama Priti Rama Madhavayor Nripa. O King, Sukadev says to the Raj Parikshit, O King, his heart is beating. Oh, King, just listen to this. What is this place? He says. This is important point. Vrindavanam Govardhanam Jumuna Pulinani Cha. You know what this means? He's meant Vrindavan forest, Govardhan, the banks of the Jamuna, he says. Viksha said, Uttama Priti. Seeing these places, Krishna and Balaram, they experienced Uttama Priti. Uttama Priti. Rama Madhavayor. Uttama Priti. Ram and Madhava. What does it mean? He's saying to the king, try to understand this point, king. They experienced Uttama Priti. That means the realm of Vrindavan exceeds in excellence in terms of its ability to be an environment that is pleasing to Bhagavan. It exceeds in such excellence the well-known Vaikuntha. Back to the same point. This is what's being said here. Uttama Priti Rama Madhavayo. It gave them more pleasure. These places, banks of the Jamuna, Govardhan, Vrindavan, and the different forests and so forth. It's an important point because this is places on earth. Vaikuntha's not on earth, right? It's up there somewhere, people think. Right? It's on earth, and it's there on earth. You can go there, and it looks pretty ordinary to the ordinary eye. So he wants to give the king a different eye. The king is from royalty too, so you might wonder, this place, Vrindavan, is better than Vaikuntha. See, it's easy for us to understand because we just been told that and we don't know anything else, and by somebody who's got some spiritual experience and so forth, and sharing that with us. So we're taken in by that. And he says things should be backed up by scripture, so we think so. We wouldn't have thought so otherwise. But in the time, then this is to convince the readers, and here the Sukadeva trying to convince the king. He's had the experience. Sukadeva was merged practically in Brahman as a Jivan Mukta. Then he heard these songs about Krishna that sent by Vyas through the woodcutter to bring wood for the winter, and sing these songs that my son might hear them and have the epiphany that something beyond Brahman, and of course, as we're saying, beyond Vaikuntha as well. You can't just imagine what happened to him. He was completely freed from any material attachment, desire, or distraction, fully satisfied in himself, contemplating the likeness between himself as Atma and Brahman. Then this poetry about Krishna Lila captured his attention, attracted him. He's so wise that what is that then? This is the center piece, really, in many of them, but there's one centerpiece of obviously of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? There's a place beyond Brahman, beyond Vaikuntha. And it's here on earth too. Oh man, made it even more complicated. And I can go there and it doesn't look to my eye like you're talking about. Now what? So you have to listen very carefully, right? You have to approach it in a particular way. Then you'll have this kind of epiphany. But we believe it because Sukadeva is saying it. And what was his position? We have good reason to believe that. He was a mukta. Incredible person, right? So beautiful abode. Then evam vrajakosham pritim yachantu balacheshtita kala bhakyai spakalena vatsapala babhuvatu. So evam vrajokosam, in this way, they entered the abode of Braj, and they relished the cute words and deeds of Ram and Krishna as their childhood now started to take a turn. It's taking a turn. And what is the turn? Here it is mentioned. Kala vakyai sakalena vastapalu babhuvatahu. Because at this age, until the completion of their Bali Lila, their Kumar Lila, they became Vatsapashu. They became protectors of the calves. Now Krishna is becoming a calf herder. Becoming a calf herder, not a cow herder, but a calf herder, is the giving in of Vatsalya to the inevitable, the dharma of their son, right? He's a cow herder, that's his dharma. But giving into it because they want to keep him as a child, and calves don't, we were just chasing. We were chasing bull, but and he was chasing us too. But they wander, right? When you try to catch a calf, it's a lot of fun, but it's not an easy task if you really have to catch her, right? So the calves are going to wander, and if you're going to take care of the calves, you're going to wander with them, and you're going to wander further and further away. So what's happening here is Krishna's beginning to now, with permission, give joy to the community in different ways, in some peril, strike peril in the heart of Yashoda uh, by way of herding calves. The forest is becoming happy because he's coming closer. The calves are happy. Yashoda's not sure. So just the point here is we found he's edging out. He's not going out all day long, going through 12 forests, crossing the Jamuna back and forth, which he'll do later on, is all in the course of a day. And how many things are there to talk about then, to dream about for his friends throughout the night. Now just a little bit and far enough that Rohini can go on and say, come back, I've cooked something for you now. I'm not staying out the whole time until it's time for the cows to come back and the calves to milk. They're coming back early. So this age, he's become a calf herder. It's a big event. Not as big as becoming a cow herder. That was a huge event, the Gopastami. So then what? Avidure Prajabhuva Saha Gopala Dharakai Charayamas Satur Vatsan Nana Krida Parichado. So Avidure Prajabhuva. This is emphasizing the point I just made. Avidure, so Dure, going further out. Avidure Prajabhuva, from the place called Braj, from the settlement itself, with the wagons shaped like a half moon, so on and so forth. From the settlement, going further out. Dure means further out. So each day he's going further out, taking longer to come back. This is developing. And so new devotees, like I say, the forest inhabitants are being brought into the Leela for the first time. And some pain of separation from the parents for the first time and so forth. So this is a kind of a sanyam, a crossing over here. And then, okay, we come to a couple of verses here. I'll read the English to you. This is Prabhupada's translation. Sometimes they would fling fruits. Occasionally they would dance, having ankle bells on their feet. And they would kick one another. It's not mentioned here, but they would do that too. They kick Krishna. So often they fought, they fought with one another also. Every so often they fought with one another, roaring and acting like bulls, with the boys impersonating cows and bulls at times. They played the flute. They wandered like two ordinary children, imitating the living beings by making noises. So this is, again, the end of their childhood. Some people say this is when Krishna began to play the flute. Big part of his life. There are other explanations, but this is one. This time he began to play the flute. And the boys would take leaves and turn them into flutes, make instruments out of them, make sounds and so forth. Very crude forms of instruments that if you could listen to it, you would never want to hear another record. You'd never want to hear another tune. What kind of music they can make with those crude instruments? What is their measure of their artisanship? Very, very special. They imitated the swans, the peacocks, and so forth. And of course, Krishna's Vabduk, what is it? Vidadbhuta. He can speak all the languages of all the creatures, and so he starts to talk with them. This is a wonder to his friends as well. Right? And so what's happening here, what's being explained in this verse basically is that on the pretext of herding cows is very important. It's very central, and so as we've mentioned, but it is a in relation to the what's being showcased here, Sakirasa, beginning of Sakirasa, the beginning of this manifestation of Sakirasa in the Prakat Lila, that the cow herding is an excuse for the fun. So we've got to herd cows. But actually the cows try to give assurance at the same time in some way to communicate with Yashoda, don't worry, we'll take care of him. Because as he begins to go out, well, it's calves, same holds true to herd the calves. She wants to hold him back or make sure he doesn't, that he is well protected. She wants him to wear shoes, which he refuses to wear because cows don't wear shoes. What are the cows doing? The cows are going like this with their hooves. They're telling Mother Yasoda, don't worry. Yes, he thinks he's going to protect us, but we're here to protect him. We're making the ground soft for his tender feet. We're not anxious to go. We're making it. So they're speaking, and there's a lot of this kind of communication in Braj, sign language and so forth. Animals communicating with the humans, humans with the plants, and so on and so forth. And of course, that's possible in the here and now if we look at the world through the lens that Mahaprabhu has recommended. Again, I cite the verse Trinada Pisanichana. Humility, Bhaktisiddhanta said, Saraswati Thakur has said, is absence of the enjoying spirit. So when we look at the world without an eye to enjoy it as if I'm the center, and foster my illusory sense of identity, which is not easy to stop doing. That's your default. Oh, that's nice. I like to taste that. Oh, that's nice. I like to smell that. So this would only foster your material sense of identity to convert that and be fully involved in such hearing, tasting, smelling, and so forth, only for the pleasure of Krishna. This is the difference between Kam and Prem, right? So when we see an object in the world, a sense object, as something for our own enjoyment, we don't see it for what it is. We take the life out of it. It has a life. It has a dharma, right? It's connected. It's the Shakti of Bhagawan. It's for him. So when we take that out, when we see like that, we identify with the sense object as if it's the object and I'm the subject that it is intended for, then we don't see it for what it is. We take that out, then the world becomes Vrindavan. That's how Mahaprabhu, any tree, any mountain he saw Govardhan. Any body of water, he thought it was the Jamuna, and he was right. So here the cow herding pointed here, the cow herding is a pretext. He's going to protect the cows, but really the cows think we're protecting him and we're facilitating his play. The freedom now, the freedom to interact without parental supervision. That is Sakhiras. Without any chaperone looking over your shoulder. So you can break the law and see what happens. I told the story when I was a kid. I took a straw and I saw there was a pin on the table, and I thought, let me see if I can breathe it in and catch it with my teeth. Well, of course, it didn't work, but but these are the kind of things that you want the freedom to do, and then you have to go, uh-oh. The parents are still in the picture. Help me! I swallowed a pin. Then she fainted. Nobody knew now. Anyway, I worked it out. So freedom from anyone looking over the shoulder. So there are nice descriptions here of this. They're playing, they're mock fighting, and so forth. And it's implied to how intimately they interacted with Krishna on an equal level. But he is just one of them. So they would take exception to things he said and did at times as well. That's all part of it in play. So this is Kadachit Jamuna Tire Vatsams Charatayo Sogai Vayasyai Krishna Balayor Jigam Sur Daicha Agamat. So he says, Kadachit, at some point, Jamuna Tire, along the bank of the Jamuna, Vatsam Charayato. Where the cows were grazing. Sakai Vayasyai, their own companions, Krishna and Balaram, or Krishna, we should say, pointed out to Balaram that among the calves is a calf that doesn't seem to belong to our herd. Before we go there, here are the words Swakai Vayasyai. It speaks about the nature of his friends. Vayasya means boys, it means friends. It means companions. But here it's saying, it's describing them as forms of happiness. Sukha. Forms of happiness. You have to understand this idea of Siddhadeha. Krishna has many forms. Balaram, Vasudeva, Krishna, Narayana, Purusha avatars, so many Lila avatars, Guna avatars, right? So many different forms. Now we ourselves, we are Tatastha Shakti. We're Tatastha Shakti, and we are also sometimes described as like a part and parcel of Krishna. We're described as Paraprakriti, which means a Shakti. We're also described as in the Gita as a Purusha in comparison to the Maya Shakti, like Krishna is the Purusha. So from one angle, we're Purusha, from another angle, we're Prakriti. Right? And we can identify with material nature, the result of which will be we'll have a material form. We can identify with bhakti, pursue bhakti, come under the influence thereby of the Swarup Shakti that bhakti is constituted of, and then we can get a form that's suitable for participating in the Lila. But that form, from the Abhed point of view, non-different point of view, Krishna is one with his Shaktis and different from them. That form, constituted of the Swarup Shakti, is his own, one of his forms. It's one of his forms. We look at Abhed, difference, then we make a difference. We look at from the Abhed point. It's, in other words, in the depths of the being of Krishna, of God, our prospect, so to speak, lies to associate with him and be and identify with fully, like you can't identify with matter. It just doesn't work. It's uncomfortable. The outfit doesn't fit. It's too tight. It's too loose. It's both at the same time. Because it's objective in nature and we're subjective in nature. But the Swarup Shakti is super subjective. So we can have a union with it in ways that we cannot with material nature. Krishna's form is constituted is his Swarup Shakti. Brahman is Krishna without Swarup Shakti, who always has Swarup Shakti. So his form is always there. But if you could separate it out, Brahman means without the manifestation of Swarup Shakti. Krishna's form is Swarup Shakti. He gives us a form of Swarup Shakti. This is a form, in one sense, this is a form of himself through which he expresses himself and plays out his reality of being Rasaraj. He needs more senses, just like it says in another way in the Bhagavad Gita, it said, everywhere are his hands, everywhere are his legs, everywhere are his ears, and so on and so forth. The way Acharya had a difficulty understanding that verse from a bhakti point of view. One answer is that means is through in his devotees. Wherever his devotees are eating, he's eating. He's tasting that. He relishes their bhakti. He's eating their bhakti. Their eating is honoring prasad. That's a form of bhakti, right? So in the depth of his being, some people say, well, all these Swarups are like pictures on the wall in Golok, and you'll get one. And that's it's one way of talking about it, but I like to think of it a little differently. Same idea. It's eternally existing. These bhavas are eternally existing. Sakya Bhav eternally exists. Mariya Ras Bhav eternally. If it doesn't eternally exist, then our goal is something that's not eternal. They're existing and they're manifest as such in the form of Krishna Parshadas, his eternal associates. So that Bob can come to us. We can have it's another form of Krishna. So they're described in this way. These cowherd boys are the very forms of happiness for Krishna in different ways. And each one has different set of senses, and it enjoys from some like mangoes, some like bananas, some like pineapples, some like all three. Right? Each one unique, and they are forms to which Krishna is playing himself out as Rasaraj. We don't usually talk about it from the Ved point of view, but it's there. Ved, Abed. And here it comes to mind. Sakyai Vayasyai. I think Jiva Swami says Sukharupai. It means they are the very forms of happiness in Krishna. And so now what's happening is, in the midst of this, the scene has been described, what's happening in Krishna's age, the whole, this shift and so forth. And now a calf is in the herd that Krishna doesn't recognize. Now, Krishna has his own cows, the calves, in this case, of his father, which are numerous. And each boy has his own herd as well. And each boy has herders who are under his guidance, who help him take care of his herd, and might have a small herd themselves as well. And every day, of course, with cow herding, and as it is with calf herding, they say as well, they all come with all their calves, and they're all out there together. And Krishna understood, out of billions of calves, this one is not part of the herd. Not only part of my herd, he is not part of the herd of any of my friends, and there are billions and billions of friends and sub-friends and so forth. How well does Krishna know his herd? Right? He knows every inhabitant there, every devotee, inside out, backward. Otherwise, how could he become? We will see as we go on the Brahma Vimohan Lila, he accepts forms like all the cowherd boys and all the calves, and the mothers can't tell the difference. They can't tell that it's now Krishna. They can't understand why they're more affectionate towards him. They're still more affectionate to Krishna, but their affection to their own sons has exceeded what it was previously. We'll go into that. That's upcoming chapters, chapter 13. But Krishna here recognized this calf doesn't belong. So with sign language, he sends a message to Balaram. Check it out, this calf. And Balaram will give his yes. Very astute of you. So something's up. Where does this calf come from? Right? And so Krishna continues herding around. He comes to this cow and he pets the cow. And Krishna is fond of grabbing the tails of cows in his early Kumar age and being dragged by them through the cow dung and everything, much to the horror of and delight at the same time of Yashoda. So nothing out of the norm. And suddenly grabbing the tail, standing in one place firm, he also grabs a hoof and swirls that calf around. And so the boys are seeing this and thinking, wow, look at the Krishna's, look how he's playing with that cow, that calf. You've never seen him do something like that before. And as he's doing it, the calf turns into a big demon. He's shaped out the disguise of one of Kamsa's henchmen, Vatsasura, and then he threw them into a tree. We're getting ahead. Tam Vatsa Rupam Viksha Vatsayuta Gatam Hari Darshayan Baladevaya Shane Bhukta Ivasada. So the Asura disguised himself as a calf and infiltrated the group, but Hari noticed him, pointing him out to Balaram. I explain this. He approached slowly, as if he were innocent. The word mugdha is used to describe Krishna. there's two sides to Krishna, Mukta and
Sarvagya.
Sarvagya. Mukta Sarvagya. Sarvagya means all-knowing. Mukta means foolish. It means unknowing, innocent. So these are the two sides of Krishna. Of course, the equation changes from the Vrindavan Lila to, let's say, the Mathura and the Dwarka Lila. Dwarka Lila, his all-knowing side is prominent, and his unknowing side is comparatively suppressed. Therefore, Uddhava marvels, I know that you know everything. That's apparent to me. But still, you act sometimes as if you don't know and ask for my advice. And this, he said, is very wonderful. And then the reverse we find in Vrindavan. But the norm is that he appears as if he doesn't know. He's just a coward boy. But every now and then he shows that he knows. And the way in which he knows is important to us. Because if his mugdha completely covered his sarvagya, his omniscience, then how would he hear our prayers? But it doesn't. So he hears the prayers of his rag bhaktas. We want to enter into the leelas where his all-knowingness is pushed to the background. So here it said he was appearing just like a mugdha. And suddenly he grabbed the cow, the bull, the calf, swirled him around, and so he said, then he grabbed his tail. As soon as he whirled him up into a kapita tree. Kapita tree is I think we have them here. They're called wood apples. You know, wood apple is European name for them, and they're tasty. But they also have they make a good substitute for a ball. So Krishna threw them into the kapita tree, and then all the fruits came down, and the boys could collect them, eat some, and add them to their creation of competitive games, which is common at this point in their Leela. This verse describes him as he did this, Achyuta did this. It speaks of how in doing this, he just stood in one place, firm, and whirled the calf. Now, this is a problem as we go on, because anyway, the Surah had a huge body. He fell along with the fruits, seeing and the boys were astonished, and they said, "Sadhu, sadhu." Very good, well done, well done. They applauded him, and the gods showered the very flowers. So this is, I think, the first occasion in Krishna's exploits in which the gods showered flowers. And this is the first occasion in which Krishna overtly exerts an obvious effort that results in the slaying of a demon. Like I said earlier, it wasn't the case with the felling of the Arjun trees, or he just sucked the breast of Putana. He didn't do anything wonderful. With the cart, well, he was under the cart, he just kind of kicked it, and it just broke. You know, I mean, so Trinavarta, somehow he got carried up in the wind, and the wind couldn't hold him. You know, how long can the wind can hold any object before it lets it come down, back down to the ground? So here, as we turn towards his Sakyaras Leelas, they're marked by this beginning of the overt slaying of a demon that is something that the other rasas, inhabitants, are not typically privy to, right? They have to get reports about this, right? To hear reports from the cowherd boys who could be exaggerating. I mean, they're just boys. But that said, on this, and we're hearing now a couple of things that are happening that give us reason to understand the boldness that they had, as we'll see in chapter 12, to walk right into the mouth of Aghasura. Where do they get that from? They get that from this, from the slaying of Vatsasura. And what's coming next? The slaying of Bakasura. These two gives them the courage from their experience. They're seeing Krishna do something he's never done. Nobody's seen him do anything like this before. Of course, they're wholly identified with him, so they think, well, we could have done it ourselves. But here, in the very onset, when this first happens for the first time, it's mentioned, they were astonished. Holy cow, they said. Holy calf. And what was that unholy calf? Unholy cow. What? What happened? They thought. Now, this is very, very peculiar because on its face, it looked like Krishna killed a calf. Of course, he arranged for him to turn into his demon form before he threw him into the tree. But now the boys were shy to go home and say, and Krishna killed a calf and it turned into a demon. So they were silent. They didn't report this event. They had to keep this in. Go to sleep at night, think about, wow, you see that? They slay that calf. And just to give you some idea, I mean, once in Vrindavan, during the time of Govardhan Puja in Kartik, the devotees, Prophet's disciples, made a big, cake or something like that, big Govardhan hill, right? It was edible. And they made little cows out of bread or something like that. And they brought in the Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, what, do you want me to eat a cow? I mean, he knew it was bread, and so, but he just couldn't fathom it. It's said in Bhagavatam that the sages of Naimisharanya, when they heard that in Kali Yuga cows would be killed, they just couldn't imagine. It's like if I said to you, in the future, there'll be a big market for fetuses, aborted fetuses. They're real tasty too. And they can be cooked in this way, and they can get them rare or well done, or whatever. I mean, it's just like, what? How could you? So, as bad as you could think of how impossible that could be that humans would do that, is how they thought about this. They saw that in Prabhupada, like, whoa, that's very, very beautiful. How he felt. So these boys, it was a demon. Krishna was right to do it and everything. Later on, also gopis, they'll hear about this. It'll get out. But they weren't afraid to come home and just tell the story. But they put it together with something that was obvious later on, the slaying of the bull, Aristasura. They said, look, you killed a calf, you killed a bull. I think, you got to perform some penance, right? You want to come close to us, but we don't want to touch you. You're impure. Go bathe in all the holy rivers of India, then come back. Okay. So he's very clever, of course. He just dug a little hole and all the rivers came in. That is the Sham Kund. And then Radharani said, wow, that was far out. I'd like a kund like that. Have one. Causes to overflow. Sham Kund overflows into Radha Kund. Sham Kund, Radha Kund, ki jai. So this is the beginning then of something that is very central to the Sakyaras Prakat Leelas. Every day they're meeting someone new. Typically Kamsa's henchmen being sent, and Krishna's dealing with them. And they're going back and reporting it, singing songs, composing songs naturally about it. So we'll hurry ahead here to finish. We're running out of time. So they go from here, take the calves to drink water. And of course, they won't drink water themselves until the cows are drunk. And coming upon a pond within the Jamuna, suddenly what happens? Well, what's really being said is kind of that day they came back and they didn't report it. As I said, they're dreaming about it. They go out the next day, and this next day they're going out even a little further. And they took a little breakfast with them, packed a little extra after eating breakfast to stay out. Each day they're going out a little further. This next day, then they take the calves to drink, as I said, and all of a sudden this big duck this big heron or a crane, or I mean, you think it's like a little fantastic? Well, they thought so too. What the heck is that? They thought the crane like looked like a mountaintop cut off by a lightning bolt landing on the ground. They got a big beak. I mean, they didn't know what to make of it. After a while, they get used to this, right? And as I say, that's what gave them the courage to go into the mouth of Aghasura. Where'd they get that from? Well, they see this thing and they're just like, holy, what is that? What is that thing? And he doesn't look friendly either. So they experience these kind of like sanchari bhavs of fear for even for Krishna. This thing's obvious got a mission here, and it's not a nice one. So of course Krishna understands and what's happening, but Bakasura grabs him in his beak. But Krishna reacts like he's you can think, well, it might be pretty nice to have Krishna on your tongue, right? Krishna's very sweet, very charming. To have Krishna on your tongue would be very nice, but you put Krishna on your tongue every day and you don't have any taste for that. Maybe even taste bitter. Therefore, instead of chanting, you're counting. What I will do next. Don't count. Chant. Count after chanting. After you chant, then you count 1, then chant. Don't think about it. Oh, 2. So chant, don't count. But in the beginning, you're chanting, Krishna's on your tongue. He's not different from his name, but it doesn't taste sweet. So he ended on Bakasura's tongue. Sweet as anything, but he's burnt like a hot chili. And he had to cough him up. And then he tried to grab him again. And Krishna took his 2 beaks. You want to open your mouth? Let me help you, he said. He opened his mouth. Why? That's later. This, and they returned home. The boys want to tell this story. By the time they had returned, they had already composed various songs about this wonderful feat of Krishna, and they're telling to the elders and so forth. This is the first instance, and the boys are reporting this extraordinary activity of feat of Krishna, of which there will be many going forward. And the elders are hearing it for the first time, and they're thinking, how do we make sense out of this? There was some big creature there. Obviously, they must have exaggerated the size of him, but how did this happen? Did Krishna do something was he impious in his bad life, his previous life, that this would happen to him? Because it didn't happen to any of the other boys. We thought everybody was pious, but our boy was singled out. Yasoda's thinking, did he do something impious? And the Maharaj said, no, that couldn't be. Because if it was something as a result of impiety from his past life, then he would have got the full reaction. But instead, the duck died. So he must have been reaping the fruits of his own bad activities. And Krishna was the instrument that Narayan used to play that out and give this baka the reaction that he was due. Something like this. They figured it out and put it all in place. Remembered, as they do repeatedly going forward, Garga Muni's words, your son will be like Narayan. And they're thinking, that's pretty far out. But Narayan's not like Krishna. Krishna's like Narayan. That's what I'm saying. I said the other day, majesty, Aishvarya, is a subset of the Madhurya of Krishna. So Krishna's like Narayan, but he has the majesty of Narayan. He can do things, of course, they're thinking Narayan's doing things through him. But the point is, from the point of view of Siddhanta, that Krishna has the majesty of Narayan, not just a secondary thing for him. So he's like Narayan, but Narayan is not like him. He doesn't have sweet leelas like Krishna. He doesn't become mugdha, bewildered by prem, except that he becomes the son, the lover, the friend, and so on and so forth. So this is the introduction, if you will, to the next chapter, which is the beginning of the Brahma Vimohan Lila, which is centered on the slaying of Aghasura, a wonderful feat that attract the attention of the gods, brought the attention of Brahma, and so he has to come onto the scene. Grantaraj Bhagavat ki jai. Gopal Krishna ki jai. I'll stop there. I guess we have a few minutes still. Any question?
There is one question here.
Yes,
by
yes.
Maros. He's saying
Who?
Maros.
Maharaj?
No, Maros.
Marosh. Ki jai. Marosh ki jai.
He's asking, what about cows which are in herds of Krishna's friends? Don't they have desire to be directly in Krishna's herd?
What about the mothers of Krishna's friends? Don't they desire to have Krishna as their son? It's a similar question. Yes, they do. They do. And in the Brahma Vimohan Lila, they got the opportunity to do that. It's a Lila that very much caters to the Vatsalya Rasa and to the Sakya Rasa. But with regard to the cows, you're asking, don't they desire to be Krishna's own herd? Well, they herd with Krishna every day. So as I said, the boys merge their herds with Krishna's herd, and for the whole of the day, those cows and the other boys are being herded by Krishna as well. So there's a part of the day, of course, that they're not with Krishna, and they're in Subal's herd, Sridham's herd. And if that wasn't the case, then how would the Leela play out? So everybody has a place to play in the Leela, and everyone is fully satisfied in the Leela, even when sometimes someone in one Mukhi Rasa may have an attraction to another Rasa that's compatible, which will then, for a while, serve as a sanchari bhav and augment that Rasa, nourish it. That goes on. But the point is here, this is a realm of Rasananda. Everyone is fulfilled there. Everyone is fulfilled. Yes, you got a question? No. I thought you were raising your hands.
Kamaraj,
Yes.
you mentioned this adakshaya aprakrita.
Yes.
In relation to experiences, is it like when he's having an experience, is it a adakshaya would be like an overtly transcendental where everything disappears? Is this like a bhava type of experience? Or?
Well, what I mean by the difference between the two is one is majestic in nature. Now, Krishna's Leela is, as we said, it is fully transcendental. It's otherworldly. It's super extraordinary. It has, but it looks just like Gopakumar said, just like the place on earth that I came from. Looked exactly, but somehow it's different also. So both elements are there, but the nature of its appearance is deceiving, like the nature of a Vaishnava is deceiving. Vaishnava Kriyamuta Bhignanabuta. You might not know what's in his or her heart, because bhakti looks like karma. You eat, you sleep, you do other things. You sing, you dance, not like a jnani or yogi, just sitting in meditation, giving everything up. So, such is the nature of the Prakriti Lila, but that is not to say, to answer your question more fully, that an experience of the Prakriti Lila will not be like an epiphany or just be something ordinary. It'll be quite an epiphany. At the same time. What else? Yes.
It said that the Bhakti is the transitory vowels of the other chart.
I mean, if you feel your whole body melt away, you have to think that's pretty extraordinary. Your whole body will melt away. Once I was on Prabhupada's floor in a second. This just reminded me in Mayapur. And I used to go there and sit. It was a big building, but he had one room there on the middle floor. I think it was 3 floors. It was balcony. So I used to go sometimes in the back of the balcony, sit and chant. Sometimes Prabhupada would come out and walk and chant. Sometimes he would stop and talk to me. And on occasion he did. And then he went inside and I went to use the bathroom and the whole body up in front of me. So I really think these things are wonderful. It's a prakriti. A prakriti. It's wonderful too. Yeah, so it's that'll happen too. Yes.
The transitory body, like you wrote in the Astra, said to cover the study body, but not fully, right? Like that experience would be different still for someone in Sakras.
Yeah. There are certain emotions that are considered secondary rasas that have the power to further suppress the dominant rasa of a devotee and for the experience of rasa. That's one thing. And then another thing is the mixing, where it acts as a sanchari to augment or nourish the sakya. Secondary rasas can do also, or primary rasas. Just like incompatible rasas can cause it to contract. Does that answer your question?
Or like the experience of the world for someone in Sakras versus someone in Guru or Vatsalya, would those be nuanced in the sense that?
Yeah, everybody's different. You experience it from the center of your aesthetic rapture. Sure. All right, we'll stop there. Madhavan ki jai. Oh, Krishna Bhagavan ki jai.